Have you ever found yourself feeling anxious in your relationships, constantly worrying about upsetting your partner or friend, or feeling like you have to people please just to keep the peace? Here's a hard truth. Without boundaries, anxiety in relationships can spiral out of control. Today, we're going to explore why setting boundaries is crucial, not just for managing anxiety, but for maintaining healthy, fulfilling relationships. And the best part, you can set these boundaries without feeling guilty. Hi, I'm your name, and today we're talking about something that a lot of us struggle with, setting boundaries to manage anxiety in relationships. Whether it's with a romantic partner, a close friend, or even a family member, relationships are an essential part of life. But for those of us who deal with anxiety, they can also become a source of stress if we're not careful. In this video, I'll walk you through why setting boundaries is not just okay. It's necessary for your well-being and your relationships. I'll also share practical tips on how to do it in a way that feels good. So by the end of this video, you'll have the tools to take back control of your relationships and your mental health. 1. Why boundaries are crucial in relationships. Let's start with the basics. What exactly are boundaries and why do they matter? Boundaries are the limits we set to protect our personal space, emotions, and mental health. They tell others what's acceptable and what's not in our interactions. Without clear boundaries, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, anxious, and even resentful. For people with anxiety, relationships can sometimes feel like walking on eggshells. You might worry about disappointing others, overthink every conversation, or feel exhausted from trying to keep everyone happy. That's where boundaries come in. They help you draw a line between your needs and the needs of others, allowing you to protect your peace while still nurturing your relationships. 2. Signs you need to set boundaries. So, how do you know if you need to set boundaries in your relationships? Here are some signs that might indicate it's time to make a change. 1. You feel drained after interactions. If spending time with certain people leaves you feeling exhausted, anxious, or emotionally drained, it's a clear sign that your boundaries are being crossed. This doesn't mean the other person is intentionally hurting you, but it does mean that something needs to be adjusted to protect your energy. 2. You struggle with saying no. Do you find yourself saying yes to things you don't really want to do? Whether it's agreeing to plans you're not up for or doing favors that stretch you too thin, constantly saying yes can lead to burnout and increased anxiety. Setting boundaries helps you reclaim your right to say no without feeling guilty. 3. You overthink or feel resentful. If you're replaying conversations in your head, worrying about what you said, or feeling resentful because you're doing more for others than they are for you, it's a sign that boundaries aren't clear. Healthy relationships should leave you feeling balanced, not burdened. 4. You avoid conflict at all costs. Many people with anxiety avoid conflict, even at the expense of their own needs. But avoiding conflict often leads to bottled up emotions, which can explode later in unhealthy ways. Boundaries help you communicate your needs clearly, reducing the potential for misunderstandings and resentment. 3. Common misconceptions about setting boundaries. Now, let's tackle some common misconceptions about boundaries. One of the biggest myths is that setting boundaries is selfish. It's easy to feel like you're being a bad friend or partner when you set limits, but here's the truth. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about protecting your mental health and making your relationship stronger. When you set boundaries, you're not saying, "I don't care about you." You're saying, "I care about this relationship enough to communicate what I need to feel comfortable and secure." People who truly care about you will respect your boundaries because they want the best for you, just as you want the best for them. Another misconception is that boundaries create distance in relationships. The reality is that boundaries foster closeness. By communicating openly and honestly about your needs, you create a foundation of trust and respect. This leads to healthier, more supportive relationships. 4. How to set boundaries without feeling guilty. So, how do you actually set boundaries without feeling guilty? Here are some practical steps. 1. Identify your needs. The first step is to get clear on what you need. Ask yourself, what situations make you feel anxious or uncomfortable? What would make you feel more secure in your relationships? Once you identify your needs, it becomes easier to communicate them. 2. Use I statements. When setting boundaries, it's important to communicate your needs without blaming or accusing the other person. Using I statements helps you express your feelings in a way that doesn't make the other person defensive. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try, "I feel anxious when I don't feel heard in our conversations. Can we work on that?" 3. Be consistent. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time thing. It's important to be consistent and reinforce your boundaries whenever necessary. This might feel uncomfortable at first, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. 4. Start small. If you're new to setting boundaries, it can feel overwhelming. Start with small, manageable boundaries and gradually work your way up. For example, you might start by saying no to plans when you're feeling overwhelmed, and eventually, you can work on setting larger emotional boundaries. 5. Prepare for pushback. Not everyone will react well to boundaries, especially if they're not used to you setting them. Some people might push back or try to guilt you into changing your mind. Stay firm in your boundaries and remember that setting limits is not about controlling others, it's about taking care of yourself. 5. Boundaries in romantic relationships versus friendships. Now let's talk about the difference between setting boundaries in romantic relationships and friendships. While the principles of setting boundaries are the same, the dynamics can differ. 1. In romantic relationships often involve a deeper level of intimacy, which can make setting boundaries feel more difficult. However, boundaries are essential for maintaining a healthy partnership. For example, if you need time alone to recharge, communicate this to your partner. It's important to balance togetherness with personal space. 2. In friendships, boundaries can be more about emotional support and time. If a friend consistently turns to you for advice but you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to set a boundary and let them know when you're available to talk. Boundaries in friendships help maintain balance and prevent feelings of being taken advantage of. 6. How boundaries help manage anxiety. So, how exactly do boundaries help manage anxiety? Here's the thing. When you set clear boundaries, you reduce the uncertainty and stress that often fuels anxiety. Knowing that you can protect your mental and emotional space gives you a sense of control. This control is crucial for managing anxiety because it allows you to make choices that prioritize your well-being. For example, if social situations tend to make you anxious, setting boundaries around how much time you spend with others or the types of gatherings you attend can significantly reduce your anxiety levels. You're no longer forced into situations that drain you or make you uncomfortable. Boundaries also help you avoid burnout. When you're constantly saying yes to others at the expense of your own needs, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Setting boundaries allows you to protect your energy, ensuring that you have enough left for yourself. 7. The long-term benefits of healthy boundaries. Setting boundaries might feel uncomfortable at first, but the long-term benefits are worth it. Not only will you feel more in control of your anxiety, but your relationships will also improve. Healthy boundaries create mutual respect, reduce conflict, and allow for deeper connections. Over time, you'll notice that setting boundaries becomes second nature. You'll feel more confident in your ability to communicate your needs and less anxious about how others will respond. Embrace the power of boundaries. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful tools you have for managing anxiety in relationships. It's not always easy, but it's essential for your mental health and your overall happiness. Remember, boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating space for yourself to thrive. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who might need to hear this message. Let's continue the conversation about mental health, anxiety, and how we can all set boundaries that help us live more balanced, fulfilling lives.